I recognize some of the names here, so a lot of you guys may know us already, but we are a 360-degree professional services consulting firm providing expertise in IT service management and agile project management. So we are a Sharewell software preferred partner on the ITSM side. We're a Microsoft Gold partner in project and portfolio management. And we also do a fair amount of work with a couple other platforms, Bomgar, for example, and SolarWinds. But at the end of the day, we're really a process firm. We really believe that, as we say, process makes perfect, that nobody wakes up in the morning with a burning desire to have another piece of software, and that ultimately these things are, the value is determined by what they enable your business to do. So here today we're going to talk about tools, and this is something that we've talked to a lot of folks about, and issues that we've seen people have with our experience in this space. I'll back up a little bit. For the first 5 or 6 years that Beyond 20 was in business, we actually built our entire consulting practice around rescuing failed tool implementations. So basically, when someone we were tool agnostic. When someone went out and purchased an ITSM platform or project management platform, and the project had gone badly, and it was 10 or 12 months in, and they had thrown the vendor out, and everything had gone sideways, we were the ones that you called to come in and run project rescue. So we've gotten a chance to see and work with a lot of different types of platforms, and that kind of is part of the genesis of what we saw here. Is that a lot of times it's process issues or poor planning that cause these things to fail. But at this point in the market space, we also see that not all tools are created equal. So what we're trying to do here is present just a basic list of some things that might make you look and say, what, maybe from the technology side, we need something that's going to enable us a little bit more. So that brings us to 5 signs that it might be time to replace your service management tool. Although I notice we have at least 6 signs here. So maybe we'll give you one for free. Go ahead, Andy. What do you got to say for yourself?
Yeah, so one of the things that Brian was saying is we definitely believe in process, and it's process first, but one of the things we've also found is that it does go hand in hand with technology and the tool, because oftentimes you need that tool to help you really drive that process home and enforce the process around it. And so these things do go hand in hand. The challenge you fall into, or I guess one of the pitfalls we warn you against, is thinking that a tool is going to fix a process problem. It won't. A tool will, if you have a process, it'll make it more efficient, improve it, but it will not solve a process problem.
Right. If you automate a bad process, you just get a bad result faster and more consistently, right?
Exactly, yeah. So if we write a bad automation, we've just done a mistake a whole lot quicker.
Yeah.
So, today, we have the 5 signs. And so the 5 signs we're going to talk through is the inability to support business processes outside of IT. We can go ahead and kind of jump into that one. So that's the general idea that in today's space, and the tools available, and the demands on IT, and the demands on IT to respond to the business, your tool has to be able to do more than just standard ticketing within IT.
Right.
These are large investments for any IT organization, and we need to be able to leverage them outside of just IT. So, workflows, a common one, and Brian can kind of elaborate more, but a common one we see is, HR onboarding. That's a big one. Within higher education, which is kind of where most of my background's at, take the one-stop initiatives, for example. And so that's where we're pulling in, the registrar, parking, financial aid, all these places that essentially need the ability to do workflow-based things. Someone comes in, they need assistance, it needs to get escalated, we need to get approvals, it needs to come back. These are all things that we can, draw on a whiteboard, and then we need the tool to help us do it and make us more efficient.
Right, and this, gets back to a core concept that we talk a lot about, which is that, when we talk about the idea of ITSM or IT service management, that there's a solid case for dropping the IT off of that. That as an IT organization, we're really just doing service management. We're delivering IT services, but it's the same concept as any other service provider. So to that end, what you're really looking at is saying, look, for a service management tool, you want the ability to deal with all kinds of other services. As you mentioned, HR onboarding. We've got, as we mentioned before, we do a lot of work with Cherwell software, but we've used Cherwell for some very almost I want to say creative ways to, creative types of business process automation. Everything from, HR onboarding to facilitating audits and assessments for regulatory compliance to, we've got customers in the manufacturing space that are using the same platform for return merchandise authorization requests to track these resources for complex physical devices that they manufacture, and to handle everything from the field service request all the way through tracking the package as it's shipped back through FedEx to identifying what batch it came out of, and ultimately working through that process of getting a replaced or repaired unit back to a customer in the field. So really, as you mentioned, Andy, anything that's a business process you can whiteboard, ultimately, an effective investment in service management tools should be something that will allow you to do business process automation on those things. Not just, it's IT isn't just help desk anymore, right? Or ITSM isn't just help desk. There's a lot more to that than just incident management, problem management that we need to support.
Exactly, and that's the areas where IT needs to start providing more value to the business, because we can provide so much more value than just being the help desk. We can really, as you mentioned, be service management that's focused on IT, but we can really do a lot of things. To elaborate a little bit more on, the HR onboarding, I really like that one because that's, a deceptively complex process, and it involves a lot of different areas. Because, even within IT, you think, okay, we're hiring somebody, we got to create them an account, we got to create a mailbox, we got to order a workstation, so there's 3 different areas just within IT we got to kick off the workflow. If you can combine that with, okay, now we're also going to kick this off, make sure that they're entered into the payroll system, make sure that they have gone and gotten their, whatever parking they may have to get, all these other different areas that interact with a new employee, going ahead and scheduling their, employee onboarding sort of seminar that everybody has to do for their initial training. Have all that tied into one process that kicks off. That way you don't get people dropped off in between of that sort of onboarding process.
Sure, and there's a lot of benefit to tying those things in. One thing I think about is time off requests and vacation requests and things like that. So, if you think about it from an incident management perspective, on a service desk, you use your service desk tool, and you're processing incidents and then handing those off or escalating them to another tier 2, tier 3, etc. If you could have your same system tracking time off requests and things like that, then it actually allows you to say, well, you know what, we don't want to escalate to Joe on the email team because Joe's actually out on vacation. He's on his honeymoon this week, and so we're not going to send incidents his way. We know in our system that he's not available, so we can reroute that to somebody else, right? So there's benefit to identifying those synergies and having them on a single platform. Let's move on to the next one.
The second, sign that it may be time for a new tool is that it requires an army of developers to support. And so this is, I guess, a particular hot button for me, just because in the past, I've had projects delayed, or in worst cases, we kept doing a manual process which should have been automated, simply because we didn't have enough resources to be able to design that and implement it within our tool. It took a very specific, coder or specific administrator, and we couldn't build that skill set fast enough to keep up with our demand, and it held us back.
Yeah, this is something that, I can see a lot of you guys are kind of nodding along with this, that you've got basically the kind of legacy platforms that have been around for a long time that require a specific administrator. They require, specific developer skill set to manage. So anytime you want to make a slight change to the workflow, or you want to change an SLA, or you want to make, changes to an escalation procedure, something like that, you've got to go and write code. And that's kind of crazy because, as we know, business requirements are changing all the time. They're changing, at an increasingly rapid pace. So if you allow yourself to be constrained by a tool that requires you to write code or to do development work every time one of these things changes, you're going to impair IT's ability to be agile. You're going to impair IT's ability to respond quickly to changing business needs, to changes in requirements, and so forth. And I think that's something that we can agree is less than ideal, shall we say.
Exactly. And one of the things you may start to notice is that these signs kind of build on top of each other because,
Yeah.
if you're out there kind of promoting, hey, we have this new platform that we can really make our HR onboarding process super efficient. I mean, it'll be one of the best things we can do to really move us forward. And suddenly you can't get to it for the next 6 months because you only have one resource that can actually implement it. That's really going to hamper your ability to even deliver on the things that would make you better and deliver value.
Yeah, and there's definitely a dollar value to that. Um, okay, so let's yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, as we look at again, that drove us to the Sharewell platform. We mentioned that we were tool agnostic, and we had, worked with a lot of different things, but, we've just found ourselves doing a lot with Sharewell simply because we could have a lot of people in the organization that were able to do these things using what they're calling a codeless application development platform. So the ability to go through and and build workflow with very intuitive, kind of drag and drop interface, but still be able to do things that are, legitimately powerful, real business applications without having to code. There's a good story there.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that sometimes is easy to get lost when you're buying or evaluating a new tool because everything in the demo looks easy. They're kind of
Yeah.
designed to do that, so it's easy to miss this one. One of the areas I encourage people to look at is Forrester has a nice report that says, okay, it compares how easy the vendor said it was going to be to install and how much actual customers said it was easy. And what you look for in something like that is, does it line up? Did the vendor say it was going to be really easy and it ended up being hard? And that lets you know, okay, what are you getting into? And I would also work that into part of your references. As you're talking references, a lot of times we just ask them, okay, are you happy with the tool? I would encourage you to ask a question is, how easy is it to make changes in your tool?
Yeah.
Try and drive and see if you can and understand from current customers how easy is it for them to automate things and to make improvements. Does it sound like they like, yeah, we send it to our team of 10 admins, and you're like, whoa,
Hmm.
wait a minute, or hey, we can make changes, almost immediately as customers sort of provide a requirement, we're able to respond to those.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to number three then. The pay per process license. Now, this is something that I think just needs to go away in this industry, but it's been persistent. So, this was something that we started to see in the late 90s with a lot of the large scale enterprise level, quote unquote, service management platforms, at a point where there was a real solid division between enterprise and not enterprise platforms and the rest. So what you found people doing is having to pay per price per process. So if you went out and bought Remedy, for example, you'd end up paying for the license to do the service desk functions, incident, problem, change. But then if you, or sorry, incident and problem and service request. But then if you wanted to do to add a CMDB, you were buying another license. If you wanted to start doing change management, you're paying for another license. And if you wanted to start, now if you want to start accessing these things with a mobile device or through a web interface or SaaS, whatever, it's another license. And as a process guy, I think that process is tough enough as it is. It's hard enough to get organizational buy-in and to get folks to adopt these new things if you don't you don't need to add the complexity of going out and getting a purchase order to spend more money for it at the same time, right? A lot of the current and more modern platforms are giving you all-inclusive licenses that allow you to just say, look, we're going to get it all out of the box, and maybe we don't use it today, but it's more based on the number of users than how we use it or what we choose to do with it.
Right, and from being on the, the project management side, sort of these implementations, it's super annoying and it's super hard when you have to go back to the well. And what I mean by that is, okay, you've sold the organization, you've told them, okay, we now have this tool, we're going to get all this value out of it. Here's the things we can do, and you go off and buy it and you start implementing it, and then you suddenly realize, as you described, oh, hey, to do the CMDB, I now have to go buy another license. I have to go back to the well and ask for more money. That is never a good conversation. Every project I've been on, it has impacted the project, obviously, timeline-wise and cost, but it's also hurt the credibility because it's also been one of those, well, hey, why didn't you know this? You pitched this on all these things, and now suddenly you're coming and asking for more money for this component. Like Brian said, this is one of those things that just needs to go away.
Mm,
As you look at IT service management and how integrated these processes are and how integrated they're supposed to be, with each one of them have inputs and outputs to other processes, you can't pick them apart. You got to have it as a full service management suite. And so again, this is one that, like I said, has personally bit me before where I've had to go back to the well, and that is never an enjoyable occasion.
yeah. So the next thing that we look at, the fourth challenge, is the loss of customization after upgrades. And I think a lot of you folks have probably been through this as well, where we go through, we do a big deployment. It's a heavy lift because we've got all of our, especially if in these platforms where you had to have a lot of heavy development done and consultants and so forth to come in to build and deploy your system, and then hey, we're running on version 8.1 and now 8.2 just came out, and so we need to upgrade to get an incremental increase in functionality or whatever. And we lose all those customizations, all those workflows and everything that we've built before. We have to do them again. And that ends up sometimes running in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of professional services to just handle a simple upgrade, right? Or what should be a simple upgrade. Or sometimes, going from version 7 to version 8, yeah, the software has the same name, but it's basically a forklift replacement. It's just as much work as if you were going with, something brand new out of the gate. So, say no to that in your requirements. If you're dealing with that with a tool vendor right now, then the next time that comes around, it's time to look at a new tool vendor. Chances are, with the platforms that are guilty of this, you can probably replace them with a more modern platform for what you're spending on support and maintenance. With these legacy tools, and there's just no reason as a customer that you should put up with this kind of thing, this kind of limitation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on to a few things you said there. Sometimes we think, oh, we have to upgrade. We got to stick with this tool. Well, if the upgrade's as much as implementing a new tool, make that the last time you have to deal with that heartache. Go to a new tool that you're not going to have to do that every single time. I know one of the things that hurt us was what happens is you get so fearful of those upgrades because you don't know what it's going to break, you don't know what you're going to spend, you end up missing out on the functionality of the new one.
Yeah,
We ended up with some tools where we were driven by the end of life more than we were driven by the new features.
sure.
When is a vendor going to stop supporting this? Oh, dang, okay, now we have to upgrade it. We missed out on all the greatest features and things we could have got out of that tool because we were so afraid to upgrade it. And, back to your point of the investment, if you have money to invest in your tool, do you want to invest it in upgrading what you currently have or going out there and building new applications, new services for other
Yeah,
people outside of IT? You think about what value you're getting out of your money that you're actually submitting into it.
right. No, I absolutely agree with that. And the last one is the ability to get your data out. Here we have kind of an almost phobic view of tools that require you to put a bunch of data in, but that make it incredibly difficult to to get the data out. We've got a couple of platforms that we get stuck with around the office that you can't get really good reporting out. You can't get, you've got all this information in there, but it has to be extracted in such a painful and proprietary way that ultimately it's as if it's not there. So, having the ability to do not only very robust and extensive reporting using things like SQL reporting services or Crystal reports and things like that. That stuff's all fantastic. You should definitely look for that kind of support. But you also want the ability to do ad hoc reporting or to easily build customizable dashboards that will allow you to have access to the kinds of information you need to make decisions, right? Just for decision support.
Right, and one of the easy symptoms I've seen of this was working with tools that had bad reporting so much that I just got used to pulling things in Excel. That was what
Yeah.
I did. If my primary reporting mechanism is pulling it into Excel so I can do it myself, that is a sign right there. That is a sign that your tool is not reporting the way it should be if your first step is to export it out of that tool.
Yeah, this actually goes back to the paper process license too, and this is a thing that just drives me nuts on some of the platforms that are out there where you actually have to pay for the reporting capability as a separate license. And I kind of look at that and say, look, this is your data. You put it in there. Why would I have to pay to get my own data back out of a platform, right? That absolutely should be basic functionality that's included. And and I shouldn't have to be paying any kind of license, much less an additional kind of functionality license for that. But that seems to be more the norm than not.
Exactly. And to kind of go along with that is to piggyback to, number two, your army of developers. If your army of your tool developers and admins are also the only ones that can really produce reports, that's another sign because A, that shouldn't happen. B, now you've already said, we got a shortage of people that even have the skill set and now they're doing reporting. That is something that a high level sort of admin shouldn't be having to do with this type of tool.
Right. Well, and you get back to the dashboards aspect of it, that what we find is that everybody thinks they want reporting, but if you've got really good real-time dashboards, a report is a snapshot in time. It's something that you're just looking at as a picture that immediately starts going out of date as soon as you run that report. But if you've got the capability to have extensive, customizable real-time dashboards that you can drill down into, then a lot of times you find, this is way better than the report. That report I was producing every Friday really isn't that useful to me anymore, because now I can see, I have this access all day long, every day.
Yeah, and you have the dashboards allow you the ability to, keep digging into the data or change directions. Whereas if you just run a report and you get output, kind of like you said, a snapshot in time, I would run reports by team. And you're like, okay, I've run that by team. Oh, look, now something's odd with Bob. Why are his numbers so different? Now I have to go back in there and run yet another report looking just at Bob's to see what it would, why is that anomaly there? What's causing it? And then I'd have to start comparing to the other team members, which then means I got to go run another individual report. Whereas with the dashboards, you have the ability to drill in and drill out and really analyze the data instead of just constantly running new reports.
Right, right, exactly. So, okay, well, I think that gets us through our top five. Oh, we got a sticky O on the
Oh,
list.
we do, we do.
We do have a handful of upcoming webinars approaching here. The next one is the top three benefits of an ITSM assessment. Why would we go about doing that, and how would we approach assessments? We're going to be doing everyday Agile, talking about how to make this work. With Agile, we say that inside every big project or 100 smaller projects fighting to get out, right? So looking at how to manage that. And then for those of you who are here and enjoying the snow today in DC, we do have a breakfast meeting that we run quarterly. This one's going to be at our Metro Center office. It's going to be an introduction to ISO 20000. That'll be on Friday, March 27th. Folks, that'll be from 7 to 9 in the morning. We will provide, as you might imagine, breakfast, bagels and coffee and that sort of thing, and we'll have an open discussion and presentation around ISO 20000, so a chance to get some PDUs and learn a few things too. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.